Good afternoon. Today we will discuss about head injuries. So under head injury we will discuss about the various topics like definition, epidemiology related to head injury, mechanisms related to head injuries, the various classifications and gradings, diagnosis, how to evaluate a patient of head injury, and the management, which can be operative and non-operative. So traumatic brain injury is the proper term for head injury. It is defined as any trauma which occurs to the brain, scalp and skull bones, which leads to alteration in the consciousness. Every minute there is an accident, and every 5th minute there is death which is due to this traumatic brain injury. So that much is the burden of related to these head injuries. If we divide according to the age, then as we can see that most of the deaths which occur is in the young patients. 60% of the death which occur in young adults about 20 to 40 years of the age, and below 20 years it is 30%, and it is quite rare in elderly patients. Various modes of related to the head injuries can be mainly due to road traffic accidents, which comprises of about 60% of these patients. Others are about a fall, which comprise 25%, and others which can be due to any assault or due to some other injuries. So mechanisms can be due to static loading, which is when anything is in stationary position and something hits over the head. Dynamic, when we are in motion and leads to head injuries. There are acceleration and deceleration injuries, mainly diffuse axonal injuries occur in this type. Then there is rotational injuries, which can also occur during movement, and there is cube and contracube mechanisms. So what is this cube and contracube? You can see that when there is impact directly over the area of impact, the injury which occurs just below that part of brain is called as cube mechanism, and when the brain moves inside the vault, and the injury which occurs away from the area of impact is called as contracube mechanisms. So they can be primary injuries. These injuries occur just at the time of accidents, and irreversible cellular damage which occurs at the time of trauma. And the only way to prevent this primary injury is to prevent the event. While the secondary injury, there is damage to the cells which was not initially present and which occurs over the period of hours and weeks after injury, and this is related to hypoxia and ischemia. So again, if we broadly classify these head injuries, the primary which occurs at the time of impact, it can be a skull fracture, it can be due to contusion and bruising of the skull, hematoma, any blood clot within the brains, whether subdural, extradural, and this hematoma can occur over a period of time also. Then it can also come in secondary injuries, and then there's diffuse axonal injury. Secondary injuries which occur after some hours or days of trauma, these are mainly due to the brain swelling or edema, due to increased intracranial pressure which can occur following injury. Ischemia and hypoxia again is the cause of secondary brain injuries. Then infection related to the open skull injuries, and seizures which can occur following head injuries. So skull fracture, we can see that it is classified whether it can be linear or depressed, simple, comminuted or compound fracture, and can also be classified as open skull fracture or closed. Base of skull fractures again have some findings which can be present as CSF rhinorrhea, otorrhea or battle signs which occur just behind the ear, that is skin changes which occur at the level of Petrus bone. And then there are growing skull fractures which occur in young patients or children, and pond fracture again it is modality of which occurs in children. So this is the battle sign. We can see that there is a bruise just behind the ear, and this signifies the base of skull fractures. Then again, this is the picture showing the surface contusions in the frontal bifrontal lobe, left side more than right. And then there is diffuse axonal injury. Again, it's a very commonly occurring injuries in young patients, and this occurs due to gray-white interface difference, density difference between the gray and white matter. So the gray matter moves over the white matter, and there is contusions which can be seen on MRI, and sometimes CT scans almost normal. And here we can appreciate here, this is the patient of diffuse axonal injury. At the gray white junction there are hematomas, and though the CT scan almost appears normal, the patient is unconscious. Then various hematomas, it can be intracerebral hematoma or intraventricular bleed. Here we can see the large intraventricular bleed at the capsuloganglionic region, and again various hematomas. This is the extradural hematoma. We can see the biconvex shape of this hematoma. Again there is subdural hematoma. Here we can see that this subdural hematoma is lying on the surface of the brain, so the underlying brain, you can see the sulci and gyri are effaced, and there is mass effect due to this. Then there is a form of chronic subdural hematoma where you can see the blood has become hypodense over a period of time, but it is causing much pressure, and there we can see the midline shift of the brain. Then there is SAH, subarachnoid bleed. Here we can see the blood is within the cisterns, Sylvian cistern, interhemispheric cisterns, and basal cisterns. Then there is the skull fracture depressed, and there is skull fracture associated with hematoma. So cerebral edema we can identify. You can see that here it is the normal brain, and here we can see that there is diffuse malignant edema over the brain. No ventricles or even sulci gyri can be seen in this patient. Then there are herniation syndromes which are related with head injury. They can be either subfalcine herniation, also called as cingulate herniation, then transtendorial herniations, which can be divided as central and upward, central and lateral herniation. So central again is either rostrocaudal, or it can occur due to upward herniation due to some posterior fossa mass. Lateral herniation, which is the most common, also called as the uncal herniation, which occurs due to the medial part of the temporal lobe, or which is called as the uncus, which herniates through the tent. Then there is tonsillar or foramen magnum tonsillar herniation, which occurs at the level of foramen magnum, and transcalvarian herniation, which occurs when there is any defect within the bone following any trauma. And it is more common in very young children where their brain is growing. So herniation syndromes, we can also comes the term Kernohan's notch. In this there is except for contralateral weakness, there is also ipsilateral weakness due to there is decussation of fibers, and when the pressure or uncal herniation occurs, then the contralateral tracts are also compressed at this level, which leads to ipsilateral weakness also. So when the patient comes in emergency, we should go for the mode of injury. We should inquire take proper history, whether it was fall, RTA, or assault, penetrating injury, or we should rule out any alcohol intake, and also we should rule out any cervical injury, because in almost 17 to 20% of the patients there is cervical injury associated with head injuries. So in history we should go inquire about the loss of consciousness, what was the amnesia, whether it was retrograde or anterograde amnesia, it was associated with vomiting, epistaxis was there, or visual disturbances and headache and drowsiness. So Glasgow Coma scale, which is very important in head injury, any patient evaluating patients for head injury. So it is divided into mild, moderate and severe. So, and the grading comes according to this. And then there is various triads which are various CT indications in which we should do the CT scan for the head injury patients. Thank you.